Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time you're watching this video. Today we are going to run you through how to actually access SageModeler, the web app, and how to use it a little bit today. Normally you will access SageModeler through the learn.concord.org site, and we will show you how to get to there and bookmark that one, because we will have you run through some already pre-created or created for us programs and activities. But today I want you guys to play. So I'm going to teach you how to get to SageModeler to be able to play around. You don't have to do the same one that I'm doing, but I'm going to show you how to do this with a scenario of how to get good grades. And you can use whatever you want though when you're playing around. But the more you play with this, the more familiar and comfortable you're going to get. So give yourself like maybe a half an hour homework assignment of just playing with SageModeler and seeing how things work. Okay? So to get to the actual site that we're going to use, you type in SageModeler.concord.org into the blank, or if you have a Google tab open, you could just search for SageModeler. And then what that will give you is this first site, which is a SageModeler.concord.org site. It's the same one that my other tab is, so I'm just going to leave this tab up. So when you get here, this button in the upper right-hand corner, it'll actually start with this page. You'll have a Launch SageModeler here, or a Launch SageModeler in this button in the upper right-hand corner. We're going to launch SageModeler. So whenever you are using SageModeler, you are going to have to create a new document, or we might have you modify one of your old ones, but that will already automatically populate from those activities. But today we got to create a new document. When we create a new document, we've got a couple things going on right now. Up in this corner, this is our variable zone. We can find images and label these images when we pull them down to the main screen with good variable names that will help us create relationships. We'll get to this stuff over here after we get a couple variables down. So the very first one that we're going to do is we're going to do an image search for, how do we get good grades? Well, okay, we study, okay? So we're going to search for an image of studying that maybe best describes us. So, you know, we could either be at a desk looking at this pile of work, or hey, let's do this floor kid. So I'm going to add this image of a floor kid. What are some of the other things that we might do? We might rewatch videos. Okay, so actually we're going to put in just the word video to do a search, because all we're doing is searching for a little bit of clip art to make this more accessible to us. So let's use this little film thing here. Ooh, wait, I see a better one. Let's use YouTube, since most of your videos are YouTube, including this one. So we're going to add that little thing there. What else could help us get better grades? Maybe reading through our assignments. So maybe we're going to look up book to read through assignments, or showing us reading through assignments. We'll grab this little dude here. Why not? Okay. And then maybe what are some things that distract from us being able to have good grades? I don't know. Maybe playing video games. So let's put just games in here, because any game might do. Here we go. We'll grab an old Nintendo controller. And maybe sports prevent us from doing good, so we'll just grab here, let's grab a baseball, because I'm pretty fond of baseball. And maybe even, I don't know, what's another thing? I mean, I think this is pretty good. So we're going to go and close this off. Okay. And then, oh, I lost some of my things. Oh, nope, they're right there. Okay, so we're going to grab this and pull our studying dude down, and we're going to label this studying for us tests. Okay, we're going to pull this one down and label this as rewatching videos. We're going to pull this down and say it as reading class materials. We're going to pull this one down and call it playing video games. We're going to pull this one down and label it as sports. Okay? So now what we haven't defined yet is getting good grades. We haven't said, because we have our variables that impact getting good grades, but we still need to have this one called getting good grades. Okay? Oh, why don't we just say, we'll put an academics guy here, and we'll say, here, how about this, owl? We'll say owl is getting good grades. I also want to throw one more in here. I want to throw in sleep. Okay? Because we're going to do some stuff with the variable of sleep. And for sleep, why don't we use the sleepy cat? Fine. All right. So I'm going to pull this down, and I'm going to label it get good grades. And I'm going to pull sleepy cat down and label it get some sleep. Okay. So now our overall goal is to get good grades. So we know that if we study for a test, we're going to get good grades. So I'm going to grab this little arrow thing that appears when I select study for tests, and I'm going to drag it over to get good grades. All right. We also know that if we play video games, that's probably not going to help us get good grades. So I'm going to pull that one over to the get good grades as well. And in fact, playing video games might actually mean that we're not getting sleep. So that one could actually react or relate to two. So before we go any further linking, let's talk about how we can actually create the relationships. So if you click on the one that you pointed to, you'll notice that over here a lot more buttons in the upper right-hand corner open up. If you click on the arrow, it's going to bring up this screen. And it allows you to look at the different ones that we said affect it. So we said studying for tests is going, or an increase in studying for tests causes get good grades to, well, that sentence doesn't really make sense, but we're going to, normally when you create your variables, we need to make sure that they make sense in this sentence. So maybe we don't want to call it studying for tests. An increase in studying for tests causes good grades. Let's get rid of get. Let's just put good grades down. Causes good grades. Okay, now that sentence makes a little more sense. And we said that these are going to increase that. Now we have a lot of different ways. And every time you select one of these, it's going to show you a graph. So if you say, you know, an increase in studying increases it by about the same, we got this nice linear one here. But if we say it does it a lot, then okay, we're gonna really ramp it up, and then it's gonna kind of level off up there. If it's a little, it's gonna, you know, it's just gonna kind of increase a little bit the more and more we study. We could do more and more, and now we see this nice little exponential graph, or we could say less and less. So it really helps at first, but after a time, you know, there's only so much that we can put in. And I think that studying might be like that for a lot of you. It really helps, you know, that first hour, but if I put a second hour in, you feel like you're just spinning your wheels and you're not gaining anymore. So let's use increase less and less for that one. Okay? And why? We're going to write an explanation. Always give us an explanation. Why do we think so? The first hour is always really productive. And after that, it seems to top off. Okay? So there we go. Now playing video games, we can do the same thing. Click on the owl to get good grades, and then we click on play video games. And playing video games, we'll say decreases our ability to get good grades, or an increase in playing video games causes good grades to decrease. And we're going to say, you know, it's about the same, or actually, if it's taken away from study time, maybe we want to say less and less. So it'll really take it away, but then playing more video games is not really cutting into that much. I think we should just say a little for this one, just to give us some differences here. Why? Because video games take away from my study time. Okay. So now we also have this get some sleep. So I'm going to label this one. Playing video games causes amount of sleep. Let's call it, instead of get some sleep, amount of sleep, so that the actual sentence makes sense. Okay. And did you all see how I did that? All I did was I clicked on where the name was in this to be able to change it so that the sentence now makes sense. An increase in playing video games causes amount of sleep to decrease, and that one we can say by about the same, because the more video games we play, we can't get more and more sleep if we play more and more video games, or less and less sleep if we play less and less video games. It's going to be a nice relationship there. So, because this is related to time, we could put that as it. Because this is related to the time I play. Okay. So, if I have a low amount of sleep, then I don't have that much time to study, do I? So the more, or maybe let's not look at it that way. Let's say that the more sleep I get, the more productive you are in studying. So if you click on study for tests now, you see amount of sleep is a variable we can use. So an increase in the amount of sleep causes studying for tests to increase. And we're going to say by a lot, because the more sleep I get, the more focused I become. Okay. So now we could add these other ones in, but for now, I mean, these are just other variables I was helping you brainstorm. All your variables should have a place. But for this video, I just want to run a quick simulation to show you how these things play out and what you're going to see when you run a simulation and play around. So I'm going to click Simulate. And now notice that everything is now anchored on playing video games. All right? Because that's a starting point to all my connections. So if I don't play a lot of video games, I get a lot more sleep, I can study for tests better, I'm going to get better grades. If I play a lot of video games, I don't get a lot of sleep, I don't study for tests because I don't get a lot of sleep, and my grades kind of go down. So let's do something else. Let's actually create an experiment. Up here in this corner, I can record some data, and I can record continuously so that as you're moving these slider bars, we're actually generating a lot of data over here at this SageModeler data that just popped up in the upper left-hand corner. So I'm going to roll this up and down and stop recording. Okay? So now what we can do is we have created a simulation. We have run and recorded some data from that simulation, and we've also set up some variables that may or may not work well for us, depending on what we see with the graph. So I'm going to show you how to do a graph and how to drag these things over, just so that we can kind of see maybe some relationships there. And then I'm going to say play. Have some fun. Maybe add some more of these in. Maybe drop some of these connections and see what that does with your bars. But I'm going to click on graph, and that will bring up this. And now you can drag and drop. Everything's drag and drop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want getting good grades to be on my X. Okay? Because this all depends on getting good grades. Now, I want to see how studying for tests helps me get good grades. So I'm going to grab the studying for tests one, and I'm going to put that on the Y. Okay? And then I can see all these data points that actually show me, ooh, look, if I have low amount of studying, I don't have as good of grades. But if I have a high amount of studying up to a certain point, it kind of looks like it flatlines off, that helps me get better grades. Okay, so these are just some things that you can do, some strength of the program. We can also, we can change some stuff. We'll get into more of this other things like transparencies and everything later when we're actually going to compare it to actual data. But everything here that I've shown you gives you a get your feet wet on. Let's go over a couple things. Get your feet wet on creating variables. We did that by adding new images. And you could have also just dragged this box down and labeled the box. Okay? You don't need to include fancy little pictures. You could just grab the box down and then label the box with your variable. We've talked about how to make a connection by hitting this arrow and dragging it to another place. We talked about clicking on one of the boxes or the boxes where the arrow points to and then grabbing this arrow. And then does the sentence make sense? How does it relate? By what factor? And then why do I think so? And then we talked about how to simulate your data and play with this slider bar and see what happens inside of all these boxes, as well as hit record so that you can actually record the data and then make a graph out of it. Okay? So ladies and gents, that's your quick little tutorial on how to use SageModeler. If you have questions, please contact Mr. Muick or myself, but we're going to go more into this in class. So guys, play, have fun, enjoy. This is a great program. It's got a lot of functionality to it. So play around with some of the other stuff and maybe ask some questions on that as well. All right. See you guys in class.